our 2022 faculty. All summer school events are free and open to the public with one more to go, so please spread the word. And happy that you all are here. My name is Jen Lynn. I am the LiTFUSE Program Director. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm presenting this program to you this evening from my home in Yakima, Washington, about 20 minutes from the city of Tieton. Hopefully all of you will be joining us in Tieton in a couple weeks. I and Tieton Arts and Humanities reside on the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakima Nation. Tieton Arts and Humanities, along with LiTFUSE, values all relationships that reinforce our commitment to art as a powerful tool for equity and diversity. In recognizing the history and respecting the sovereignty of Washington's Indian nations, we recognize and honor these first people and their significant role today in stewarding these lands as they continue to honor and uphold their ancient heritage. LiTFUSE Summer School online offerings are brought to you by our parent organization, Tieton Arts and Humanities, along with generous grant support from Humanities Washington, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Poetry Foundation, National Endowment for the Arts, Washington State Arts Commission, Fresh Hop Ale Festival, Yakima Chief Hops, Discurin Foundation, and Yakima Valley Community Foundation. I'd also like to give a shout out to our community partners, Inklings Bookstore, Fiesta Foods, Yakima Coffee House Poets, and our many gracious individual donors. Of course, I'd like to thank our LiTFUSE 2022 faculty, especially Matt Trease and Kristin Berger here with us tonight, along with my assistant director, Laura Walker, for making this pre-program possible. At this time, it looks like everybody's got their, everybody's muted, so we're good to go. So let's just make sure that you remember to turn on if you join the conversation, and then keep yourself muted when you're not talking, when others are talking. And then just save the chat for the evening's event, and definitely feel free to private message me if you have any LiTFUSE questions or any other things going on, tech difficulties, whatever, outside of just private message me. And then let's get on to our main event. This evening's talk is called Saying Yes to Detours with Matt Trease and Kristin Berger. Matt Trease is an artist and astrologer living in Duwamish ancestral homelands in Tukwila, Washington, where he serves on the board of the Cascadia Poetics Lab, co-curates the Margin Shift reading series, and teaches at Hugo House. His poems have recently appeared in Small Portions, Wordlit Zine, Phoebe, Facsimile, Hotel America, Juked, among others, and in the anthologies Shake the Tree Volume 3, Bright Press 2018, Make It True Meets Medusario. Medusario, thank you, Matt. Pleasure Boat Studios 2019, and Cascadian Zen forthcoming in 2023. Ooh, I'd like to hear more about that. He's the author of the chapbook Later Heaven Production Cycles by Busy Little One Way Designs 2013. And then we have Kristin Berger. She's the author of 6 poetry collections, including Earthwork, The Poetry Box 2022, Changing Woman, Changing Man, A High Desert Myth, Nightjar Press 2022, Refugia, Persian Pony Press 2019, Echolocation, Cirque Press 2018, and How Light Reaches Us, Aldrich Press 2016. Her poetry, essays, and nonfiction have been published widely and span motherhood, natural history, and climate change. Recipient of residencies from Playa OSU's Shot Pouch, H.J. Andrews Experimental Forest, and Starkey Experimental Forest and Range, Kristin's work is influenced by all Pacific Northwest wild and interconnected landscapes. A former member of the Women Identified editorial collective Voice Catcher and co-host of the Lentz Farmers Market Poetry Series, which I have had the pleasure of seeing. And Kristin believes in the resiliency and impact of art and writing through and sustained by community. Kristin lives in Portland, Oregon, and you can find out more about her at kristinbergerpoet.com. And now please give a warm welcome to both of our guests, Kristin Berger and Matt Trease.
Thank you, Jen.
You take it from here.
Jen.
Thank you.
We didn't actually talk about who would go first, Matt, but we'll just wing it. Thank you so much for coming. If you feel comfortable with your screen on at any point, that would be great, but you don't have to. We're hoping that this will be an interactive time together, a conversation between Matt and I, but also with you. So, you know, participation is something that we talked about, hoping that you would, you know, feel open to doing. Matt, do you want to say anything before we start?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got a pretty intimate group here, so it'll be we'll be able to do a lot of fun stuff, I think. So yeah, participation would be great. I'm not usually one that likes to talk for very long, so I like conversation a lot more. Yeah, if you've got questions or whatnot, you know, pop them in the chat, or we've definitely saved some space at the end to you know, talk through some exercises and talk through some of the ideas.
Yeah, I think you know, there's a conversation that Matt and I had about when we were trying to come up with this idea of saying yes to detours, and you know, what was it that was in our writing that was not expected, but also like what happened when you actually did things that didn't fit sort of the main map of what you thought like your writing practice should look like, or you know, what happened, what didn't happen. Talking about barriers to saying yes, you know, sometimes it's mental, like you know, I don't want to write in sonnets because I don't feel like I know how to write sonnets. So that's a mental barrier, you know. But so I think that was sort of the gist of how we wanted to have this conversation and go around and kind of pose the question to each participant about you know, anything that you wanted to share just at the beginning about your writing life, and what brought you tonight. And we can start with that and then talk a little bit about our own detours that we've taken. And yeah, if that's okay, we can just kind of open that up for kind of a roundtable introduction and kind of explore that question. So everyone's welcome to share as little or not at all if they don't want to, or as much. So Jen, I don't know how to, I'm not the DJ here, so.
Okay, if you want to keep your screen or your screen off, you might want to just raise your hand if you want to speak up and chat. And hopefully everybody feels comfortable. There's only a few of us here, so maybe just, or Kristin, maybe you could even just like kind of go through, or if you want me to, I can go through and call on people and see if we can't get people to kind of share a little bit of their story. Just remind me, the question was, you want to know where people have come into certain detours in their life, and also what brought them to this talk tonight.
Yeah, anything that they want to share about their writing life, you know, and what brought them tonight, just to start. And then, yeah, maybe one detour that they feel like they took that was, you know, not necessarily a successful detour, but something that just changed the path of their writing life.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and go first since I'm already unmuted. My writing life has changed dramatically. I'm actually a fairly new poet, which is kind of funny since I'm running LiTFUSE, but you know, I only fell into poetry, I think it's been 4 years now where I started writing. I think there was a lot of poems hidden down deep in there from my past because I never knew I was a poet. And but a lot of my first poems, I was a single mom, a lot of changes in my life, and a lot of my poems were kind of just about like personal angst and like digging through my garbage and processing. And then last summer, I ended up getting married, and a lot of things positive came into my life, and it also kind of took away a lot of the things that I wrote about. So I've had to do a real huge shift, and I haven't navigated it super well. In fact, I would say I haven't. But the things that I write about are different. The things that I know the direction I need to head into is different, but it's harder because it doesn't just come naturally. It requires more research and form and just a different way of contemplating life. And so, yeah, that's a huge detour that I haven't quite embraced. So I'm really excited to hear what the two of you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, that's great, Jen. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, I know when I first started out, it hit this point where my life shifted in a way where it was like the things I was writing about before just didn't seem, I couldn't connect to them, and I needed to find a new way to embrace the process. So,
Lynn, did I see
yeah,
your hand up?
Lynn.
Would you like to speak?
Oh, you're
Can you
muted.
unmute?
Sorry, my repair people are here, so I'll have to go last. I'm really sorry. I don't have any air conditioning and it's 113.
Oof.
I'll be back.
That's really hot.
Yeah.
I'll go next if you don't mind.
What's that?
I'm Laura, as you probably well know.
Yeah.
I've known I was a writer since I was 9 years old. And I did all the stupid junior high poetry that everybody else did, of course. And then I decided to major in creative writing. And I was scared to death of closed form poetry. And I saved it until like the very last class. And when I took it, I was blown away by how much I felt more creative. I felt liberated to have this form. And I felt like it really encouraged, I don't know, it's hard to explain. So I wasn't so afraid of the closed form when I went to graduate school for creative writing poetry at Eastern Washington University. I got there thinking I was hot shit, as probably a lot of first years do. And I just was striking out. And I mean, for like the first few months, it was just embarrassing taking things to workshop. And I decided to write a persona poem. And I had been writing to a man on death row. And I took on his persona. And boom, it just opened up everything. It was like the closed form opened up this creativity, and so did this voice that I was trying to I guess immerse myself in. So I've just found that the structure has been so liberating for me, which seems like a total oxymoron, but you know, since then I've really experimented with, in fact, I won an award for a poem that was a sestina, you know, and I've been practicing these other forms, and you can find websites that have tons of, you know, all the forms, etc. And it's just been a beautiful experience giving myself that exercise.
I love what you said about the persona poem being sort of like that thing that, along with the form poetry, but I mean, I found it's kind of related to what you said, Jen. When you have written everything you need to write about a thing that, you know, the thing that brought you to poetry or was the thing that occupied all of your work for a while, and a life event changes. It's like, what do I write about now? I had an experience of being at a residency and sort of hitting that same wall and dipping into some of these landscape forms in Barry Lopez's and Deborah Courtney's Home Ground, just to give myself my own prompts. I was there for 5 weeks. I just played my mind to its full extent. And that was, they turned into persona poems, and they were like my strongest work ever. And I've not really ever been able to do that. I mean, I'm sure I could if I get back into it, but it was a an actual detour that got me one out of my lived experience, which I was kind of tired of writing about. But the persona poems are a wonderful extra distance. And you can have so much more empathy for those persona characters than you do for yourself in your writing. That's what I found. I don't know if you did, but.
Absolutely.
So you were writing to an actual prisoner?
Mhm.
Okay, so doing that, and then did you tell him that you were writing those poems, or how did that all work for you?
So I wrote a few, and then he and I kind of stopped writing to each other. And then it developed into an entire manuscript to where there were letter poems back and forth based upon the letters we had written to each other. And then at that time, I also did an internship where I taught poetry in a medium security prison. And so that kind of opened up a space of something beyond, you know, what I learned from him, but it was all very, very informative to the work.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it sounds really fascinating.
You know what? Most people are really intrigued by it because not that many people write to men on death row. And, you know, it's a touchy subject. I've tried to put the manuscript out there, but I think in the climate right now, you know, he was a white supremacist and racist. And so there's some of that topic being touched upon. And I don't know if people even want to go there right now. I don't know if that's why they haven't been picking up the manuscript, but I'll be honest, I haven't sent it out in about a year anyway, so we shall see.
Yeah, well, I mean, manuscripts getting picked up, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. I mean, it's a lot of it's about timing and networking and who you know, where you get connected and how to find people.
It's like fishing to me.
Yeah,
You
oftentimes it
just sit
has
there and wait.
it has a little bit to do with your work, but it has a lot more to do with everything around it. So
No.
You know, it's interesting to have a piece of writing or a whole manuscript that you've been really close to that maybe isn't marketable, but it still deserves to be out there. It's still your work. It's still this story. So, you know, wouldn't get discouraged, but also, you know, it's in the world for a reason.
yeah, and there's something to be said for self-publishing too.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, one of the biggest detours that I took in poetry, I was really tired of where my writing was going, and I just didn't see a whole lot of potential in what I was working on. I had just gotten out of grad school. I was working all kinds of temp jobs, trying to avoid teaching for a little while, and wanted to write. And someone gave me a copy of Ted Berrigan's sonnets from the 60s, which he initially self-published. And it just like opened a whole rabbit hole for me in terms of what I was able to give myself permission to do in a poem. And after that, I didn't have as many of the problems as I felt like I had at that moment, where I was struggling to write, struggling to find things to write about, where it gave me a way into thinking about what I was doing very differently. And that was really helpful. It got me into connecting with poetry as though it were a visual medium, and that made a lot of difference for me. So yeah, that's the long way around to say that, you know, keeping those options open too. If it's not getting picked up somewhere, you know, this is the perfect time. It's so affordable to self-publish either chapbooks or even full-length collections. So
Yeah, I agree. I did that with my book Changing Woman, Changing Man, because it's visually really different than it's a long form long poem form. And it has artwork, and nobody was wanting that. So designed it, published it, marketed it out there, you know, and it has a really small little audience, but that's fine. But I think that's something that a lot of people say no to that. Like they think that that is a, you know, less than legit form of publishing, and it really gives you a lot more control than, especially artistic, you know, and design wise. You can do so much. And a number of poets that I know who have books published at other, you know, presses have done that. And I think the pandemic helped to sort of make you realize how, you know, if you're waiting for a contest for 9 months, you're waiting for 9 months. And I think a lot of people feel like they don't have that time. You know, there's a sense of urgency. There always is, but I think the pandemic definitely pushed things forward.
That's encouraging. I really appreciate that, actually. I'm glad that you guys have spoken to that topic. So thank you.
Yeah. And like Matt said, it's affordable. I honestly spend more money working with publishers who make me buy my own books, and I don't get a whole lot at the end. So that's a different topic. That's like the business of self-publishing, but
Yeah,
welcome,
like I said,
Robert.
it's a whole other can of worms to open up, but it is a really fruitful thing. There are a lot of people. I know when I was living in Milwaukee, there was a visual artist there who was getting students turned on to like making their own zines on the copy machines and things like that, and just kind of handing them out. There's I've been going to a reading series here in Seattle where a guy is passing around zines and stuff, and you know, it's a nice they're nice little ephemeral things too that can also be avenues for getting things out there.
Mhm.
And oftentimes your stuff has more impact because it's like there's more focus in those type of publications.
We did just welcome someone new into the room, Robert. Hello, Robert. We've got a small group tonight, just kind of an informal chat. Kristin and Matt both they wanted to know, everybody's just kind of sharing what kind of major detours have you had in your life that have affected your writing, or detours specifically in your writing? And then also like, what brought you here tonight? And what are you hoping to get out of this particular talk, if you don't mind sharing with us?
I'm gonna start from the last question and work my way to the first, I think. I'm just looking for a little bit of you know, fellowship. I want to see some you know, some other writers, other creators, other artists. I want to, you know that there are other people out there. I feel pretty isolated. So what was the question
Is
before
that a
that?
bird behind you?
Oh, ooh, sorry. I should apologize.
No,
for
I
being
love
late.
it.
I'm sorry. That we've got a rescue cockatiel in our house, so we've got a video going to keep them company. So
Oh my gosh.
does it bother anybody if I turn
No,
the
I
video
love
off?
it.
They'll shut down. They'll be quiet. So
No.
okay. All right, I'll leave it on if it doesn't bother anybody. Major detours.
Yeah, major detours in your life, your writing, whatever you want to.
I just graduated from college, so I'm 45. I'm turning 46 tomorrow, and I've just been working my whole life. Like I you know, stopped going to school early and just focused on that, I guess, just work, that and music, I suppose. But you know, I'm only now finishing my education, or at least that that certification of my education, I'll say it that way. But as far as work goes, the actual work that I've done, I don't know that I've actually started writing. I haven't really done anything other than a small chat book and the stuff that I produced in school. I have some plans for some things, and I'm doing a lot of background research on my work, but nothing to speak of even right now. So, and I'm all right with that. So, what I think I came in at the part, Matt, where you were talking about the visual part of poetry and focusing on that, and I like that a lot. Like I've been leading into that quite a bit as well. I also met an artist who does book art, I guess is what she calls it. Her name is Sarah Maker, and she works down in Georgetown in Seattle. And the books that she makes are they're not books in the traditional sense. Like that's what makes them her art, is that they are books in an absolutely non-traditional sense. She's got like a set of what looks like a set of dice, but it's actually paper folded and with a story printed inside. All kinds of stuff. It's wild.
Did you say Sarah Baker?
Maker, M-A-K-E-R.
Oh, Maker. Okay.
Yeah. If it's all right, I could put a link to I think she has an artist site that she posts her stuff, if that would be okay. So I've been thinking a lot about that, and I want to do maybe a short run of self-published poetry that I guess regards the concept of the palimpsest. If you're all familiar with that, short summary, I guess, of palimpsest is just kind of how it comes from the map making tradition. And in the olden days, maps were drawn on vellum, and it was so expensive they would not use new vellum. They would, just overwrite old vellum. And so what you would end up with were, these layered maps of cityscapes on top of one another. It would create this palimpsest. And so that's where that comes from. And, I guess as I don't know, my own experience overlaps culture. That could be a perspective, but anyway, I'd like to print those probably just in traditional book form. But I have been collecting old maps, and I want to use those. I want to erase the maps that are on them and then use those to publish with. So maybe a short 30-page, I don't know, chapbook, I don't know. So, but that's kind of what I've been thinking about lately. Thanks for jogging my memory.
Sounds fantastic, Robert. I mean, I love palimpsests and erasures and that kind of I don't want to say school, but that kind of subset of poetry that plays with the materiality of the page in that sense, and carries over the histories that reside on the paper as well.
There's such a wonderful way that maps can tell stories. So whether or not you're using an existing map or altering it, the workshop that I'm going to be giving in a couple weeks, part of that is actually creating some visual storytelling maps. And I love maps, and that's, I think, why the word detour just kind of came up for me, because I'm always thinking about roads and off ramps, and I probably should have been a truck driver, but I guess there's still time. But there's a visual artist up your way who, I'm forgetting her name, but I know on Instagram she's Modern Terrain, and she uses city maps with pictures of the place underneath, and not just city maps, sorry, any topographical map. So like the Tetons or Mount Hood or something like that. And then uses a picture of the place, and it's all done in plexiglass. So it has these layers. And then on the top layer is a white ink drawing using the terrain, either the city grids or something. It's like three different stories happening at once. And I just love that way of inferring a story or a poem. It's, to me, they're visual poems. And they have they just evoke the place in a way that I've never seen that done. And I think when you're self-publishing, getting back to where you joined our conversation, there's so much that you could do that no one else will say yes to but you. And I know down here in Portland, we have the Independent Publishing Resource Center, the IPRC, and it's a nonprofit. People do zines all the time, but it's a great place when you're trying to work with different types of paper, letterpress, you know, you can take all sorts of different classes, but there's usually like this, there's always collective knowledge around this stuff too. So if you're looking to do some sort of, you know, book like that, and you want to find someone who knows how to sew binding, or, you know, I think just being really, and you're looking for people who are creative, right? You're looking for connection. They're there. People are doing some really cool, wild stuff. And I think it's not a competitive world that we're in. I have not found any poet that I have met or any artist who's in it to win. I think everyone's in it to share. You know, there's resource sharing, there's skill sharing, there's support sharing. So
Thank you,
yeah,
Kristin.
so you have to say, I feel like I'm giving a TED talk. So you have to say yes to joining a group or finding a group of people. Like it's almost like this is the challenge for all the introverts, which pretty much we all are probably. But I love that, and happy birthday.
Mhm.
And I think that going to graduating from college is huge, no matter where it is happening in your life. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. It feels like a weight lifted
I
off my
bet.
shoulders.
I bet.
Welcome, Lauren. Lauren just entered the room. Lauren, we've been hanging out and kind of introducing ourselves, taking our time. And we got kind of a small intimate group, so everybody's just taking turns and explaining different detours in their life and pertaining to writing. So if you want to think on that and maybe come back and share, there's a couple of other people here in the room that haven't shared their story yet. But for one, different detours in your writing life, and then also what brought you here tonight. And I know you're here because I invited you. Lauren's actually on staff at Titan Arts and Humanities and is super excited about LiTFUSE and going to be helping us out a lot in the upcoming weekend. So Lynn, are you ready to share with us?
Sorry for the lapse.
No problem at all.
So, hi everybody from hot California. So I was interested in this because I got an email from Kim at Duns Neo about it. And I went to her workshop, and I've been to workshops of hers before. I wish I could sign up and do your program, but since I'm in California and you're not, that would be pretty hard, except for weekend events. I'm pretty new at writing, as you are, Jen. I've been writing about 5 years, and I started classes, even though I have a couple degrees. I started classes at the community college because I wanted to learn how to write better, and found out that poetry is my genre. Just short and straight to the point sometimes. And before all that, I lost my husband of 40 some odd years to a long, ugly cancer journey. And so my first writing was all about that. Loss and grief and aloneness and blah, blah, blah. And then I started writing about other stuff. And now I write about a variety of things. I'm always taking 1 or 2 classes. Right now I'm taking an amazing class on acrostic poetry. I'm really into art, even though I can't do any. I have a good eye. And so what interested me in this was the word detour. Because I am taking a detour from my judgmental self and trying to become wilder. That's about it in a nutshell. And I'm just trying sometimes, like I just got back from 2 weeks in the Canadian Rockies, and I was writing at least one poem in my head all the time, but I resisted putting it down on paper. And so it took me 3 days of being home. And my excuse was it's too hot in the afternoon and I didn't have time in the morning. So I'm interested in my process and how I detour myself. And I'm also interested in that becoming wilder, letting myself go more kind of thing. So, and it's amazing in the Sacramento area, there are some amazing artists and poets, but we haven't really been getting together again since COVID on a regular basis, especially at this time of year, because it's too hot to do it outside. That's about all. And I'm interested in having the recording of this to see what I missed.
Thank you, Lynn. That's, I think you're right about like trying to connect with people. It is challenging. I had a poetry reading at an orchard, a community orchard a few weeks ago. And it was the first time I had seen a lot of people in my poetry community in almost 2 years. You know, things have been going on, but it takes a lot of effort and a lot of, you know, making it the right time for you to do it. But I want to just acknowledge like everything that you've lived and you've gone through, and you know, to be in this place where it sounds like you're really ready to get to work. I mean, I don't know if you did this on your drive back from the Rockies, but like your judgment, you can just like put it in the trash at a rest stop and like keep on driving. Like, that's the thing I think that gets in the way of so much of us saying that it's okay to do something. Not just saying yes, like with full gusto, but just saying like it's okay. I can try it even if it's not perfect. And getting it from your head out my oldest child hates poetry because they feel like whatever's inside isn't going to be, it's not going to come out the way they had intended. And I'm there saying that's okay, because what you might not actually know what the poem is supposed to be. Like what's in your head is the start of it. So it has to actually come out and not be perfect, and you have to be willing to play with it. And that's that wildness, I think, is what I'm hearing. You know?
Well, it was interesting because I was writing this morning about the Rockies, and I did it in couplets, and I was looking at it, and all of a sudden I thought, no, this needs to be in long lines. And then I thought, no, it needs to be centered on the page. And if I wasn't, if I had the time, I guess, I might even make it the shape of mountains, but I'm not going to do that. I did that for a poem earlier this year. I don't think I'll do that.
Yeah, it's liberating to play with lines. Just give yourself that time to like mess around with it and see what happens.
Well, it's liberating to have the poem tell me what it needs rather than me saying, maybe I should do it in long lines. The poem redid itself in long lines.
Yeah.
So maybe a detour for me is to let the poem have a louder voice.
Yeah, I mean, that's, ultimately, when we're taking detours in the work, like that's always what we're getting towards is like, what is this expression or utterance, or how does it need to come into form? What's proper for it, not what's necessarily what are people going to expect me to how are people going to expect this to come out?
Do you have a writing group, Lynn? Or
Do I
anyone
have a
that is
what?
a writing group, or anyone that's a trusted reader?
Well,
They work?
I'm in a second Saturday writing group, and every month we read a different poet, and then, which is how I got into Kim, and then we write with the book and the poet as the prompt, but it may be nothing related. And now I'm in this acrostic poetry class, which essentially is a writing group, and that's once a month also. And I think that's about it for now. I went to Catamaran Conference. That was a week-long writing group. That was really fun. Last year I went to Napa. That was really fun and informative. So I guess the answer is yes, but it's not every week.
But it's a group of people to help, like, keep you accountable. Like you're working on things. You've got people to sort of talk shop with.
Yeah, I do have people to talk shop with, but it'd be nice to have a weekly writing group.
Mhm. I'd love to, like, it's hard to manage writing retreats for a lot of people, but it does help to be in a nice place every once in a while and treat yourself. And, even if, because that's another thing, you can wait around for someone to affirm you and give you this time and space, but, a yurt at the beach can actually be a writing retreat, or some sort of form of getting yourself out of your time and your place and your habits. And
A year at the beach?
oh, a yurt.
Oh,
I would love a year at the
yurt.
beach.
I thought you said a year. I thought, wow.
Yeah, that's all it takes for me. It's just a good year at the
Yeah,
beach.
really.
I'm real low maintenance.
Lynn, we do have an online option for LiTFUSE this year, but it is a lot cooler up in Titan if you want to make the long drive. I know it's not much time, but there is an online option if you would like to do that. At least have a weekend full of classes to learn and grow in, and some community. I know it's still virtual, but even this to me is encouraging.
I'll look again at the catalog.
Well, Joanna, can I put you on the spot? Would you mind sharing your
Sure.
detours and why you're here?
Joey.
Hi,
Sure.
Joey.
Hi, Kristin. Hi, Matt. Hi, Rob. I know all you guys. Good to see you. I'm so old. I've had a lot of detours in my life already, so I'll try to get through those quickly. Spent 30 years in Kentucky in the equine industry as a horse trainer, judge, competitor. And then once I retired from that, spent another 30 years as a visual artist. I still am a visual artist, but I helped to found the Punch Gallery in Seattle. We did that for 10 years. And I'm here in Ellensburg, and started writing poetry probably in 2015. And my poems used to make sense. They used to be lyrical or narrative or whatever those words were. And now I do erasure. I do Dadaist poems. I do all kinds of weird stuff. And sometimes I combine my visual art with my poetry. So I've got 2 pieces in the 10 by 10 show. I hope those of you who are in Titan will take a look at that show when you're there. So just combining text and collage, which is my medium. I'm not a painter. So I think my biggest detour was when I stopped writing poems that made sense and went this other direction where now my work is very fragmented and it reflects my work as a collage artist for all those years. So I don't write about things. I don't have ideas. Matt, you know, you're my hero, how you come up with your work. And I'm thrilled and surprised when the poems write themselves. So that's a whole other discussion. It's very transcendent or something, I don't know, but the ideas don't come from me. The ideas come to me. And I never have writer's block because of that. And I don't write from prompts, and I don't have a writer's group. So I don't know if you guys can see, I live in my yurt, which is an art studio, and I'm always working. We just did 31 poems in 31 days for the Postcard Poetry Festival. So motivation is always there. And basically I just chopped up a primer and pasted down some weird phrases and called it a poem. That's it.
I
A lot
love
of times
all of
those are
that.
really great poems too, Joanna. Yeah, I love the collage. Like I've been a collagist for a long time too, and it's finding a way into that. I think mostly for me it was like finding the permission to do it. Was just liberating in a lot of ways, and really opened up so many things to work on. Like it felt like a switch went off, and I was like, oh, now I can actually do more than, I'm not going to spend 6 months on a poem. I don't have to. Or if I do, it's like one poem that's 40 poems.
I have a friend who is a fiction writer, short stories are what he does. And he did a long erasure poem that spanned the length of the Trump presidency. And I'm forgetting what he used as his source. But it was fantastic, like as far as like making the leap from fiction to poetry and what he came up with. And he had his own like, you know, thing that he was pushing. So it wasn't exactly found. Like he was definitely doing some crafting and some steering there. But I love it when people jump genres and give themselves permission. And it seems to me more and more that people kind of do that anyways in their life. But some people are pretty, like, I've been a fiction writer my whole life and poetry scares me, or, you know, vice versa, or leaping outside of just the written word and, you know, exploring painting, especially. I've had some friends that do just almost tapped out of poetry completely and just did painting. And it was almost therapy. It was a way to just be released from the word. So I feel like their paintings are actual poems, my definition. So, and yeah, they're not bored either. And maybe this goes back to what Lynn was saying too, like when you're looking for wildness and you're looking for that permission to play, there isn't this writer's block or creative block. Just kind of being alive is enough material. Though I do like your yurt. I'm looking at it right now. That would be a fun place to create in. So can I ask if have you written about that time in Kentucky? Do you ever kind of detour back into your past? Because that was another kind of idea that I had about like what material people bring up to the surface.
So I'm sorry, Kristin, were you asking me that? What was the question?
Yeah, like your time in Kentucky and being a horse trainer and judge and
Well,
Has
you
that
know,
ever figured into your work?
all of a sudden, it has all of a sudden, because I just finished reading Ulysses by James Joyce. I have never read it before. And now I'm reading it. And some friends and I were talking. And when I realized that you don't have to write by chapters to do a memoir, I could write little short prose poems just of vignettes and experiences and go all the way back to my life with horses and just compare horses, visual art, and poetry, and how those things all come together, because it's the process. Lynn had mentioned process. The process is all the same for everything you do, really, whether you're a musician or an artist or a poet or a fiction, you know. So I'm very much into process. That's why I live with this studio right under my nose, because that's my day, is just being in the studio and creating all day. So yeah, all of a sudden, I think I'm going to write a memoir in just short little blips.
I look forward to reading that, Joey.
Hey, I'm going to send you the first draft, baby. You can help.
Great. Yeah, and I love Ulysses too. Like, it's a really fantastic.
Oh my God, it blew my mind. What
Yeah.
can I say?
Yeah, well, he has that whole section where it's just the evolution of the language kind of enacting itself. It's really amazing.
Well, and I got
Yeah.
turned on to it because I just read the big fat biography of Sylvia Plath, and in it, the author says that Plath and Ted Hughes, her husband, used to read Ulysses aloud to each other. So I needed to read it because it just, like, oh my God, the language, it blew my mind, and I'm still reading it. It's pretty heavy stuff, but it's great.
Yeah, and talk about taking a detour. That story is all about one long meandering detour of a day.
Exactly, exactly.
Lynn, or I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, or Lauren, would either one of you like to share your detours with us? A little bit about why you're here?
This is Bronwyn. Oh, I can't hear you. Yeah, so I'm here because I feel like I'm returning to, I've been to LiTFUSE many times, and it's always this relief of community, and it was very, I probably started, I guess really I started writing about, I don't know, it was like I went to a workshop and then I went to LiTFUSE. So it's like very much tied to the beginning of my writing, which is around 8 or 9 years, something like that. I feel like my writing is all a detour, and I mean, as with everyone, the past few years have been very strange. I've moved a lot, so I don't actually have any local writing community. My writing community is it's like in New Mexico and Oklahoma, and I'm on Salt Spring Island, just across the border. And I've actually only just recently moved here, but I moved here partly because I was trying to find somewhere to land. And so the past few years, basically, I've done a lot of writing in sort of poetry marathons, which have been with people, sort of, no one's critiquing. There's the person that organizes it offers feedback, but everyone else is just encouraging. And so I've generated a lot of material, and actually only today, like I've probably done 6 of these 30 poems in 30 days, and I've never gone back to look at the work. Because I think I needed the process, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And so now I'm like, it was very strange this morning when I was trying to dig out what I'd been writing. It's almost like, because it's been really since March 2020, I started doing these, and I've probably done about 8 of these. I don't even remember writing this stuff. I almost feel like I've got a different brain than I did then. So, and coming to this is just part of sort of coming to LiTFUSE and getting ready and being excited to see who's teaching and being, yeah. So that's what's going on for me.
Yeah, those 30 poems in 30 days challenges are really helpful. It's really hard to stay in a very particular mode or process or idea when you're having to produce so quickly, which is great because it breaks you of all of the things that you want to predetermine ahead of time, and then you can come back to it. And some of it doesn't work, but oftentimes a lot of it will. But you said you did what, 8 of those since the
Yeah.
pandemic? That's impressive. Hats off.
I-
I can do it once a year.
The final one, I was a wreck. It was like running too many marathons, right? Like you're just like, but yeah, it's intense. It's good. Yeah.
Well, and at the end of it, you have a lot of work to work with. You know, if you don't write, you don't have any work. If you write, then you have it. So it's, you know, it's a wealth of whatever it is when you start going back in and teasing out what actually could be a real poem. Or sometimes I've done a few of those, and I kind of plunk out around day 20. And then I start doing like 2 days down, and I'll write like I'll back write. So it's like cheating for yourself, which isn't really great to do. But to get to that finish line, I don't know if I'm built for that. I'm not a marathon runner, but I think that idea that like anything that you're writing will lead to something, even if there's just a phrase in a poem, and like the whole rest of it's just scaffolding, and that's, you know, put in the junk drawer. But I love this idea that you did this during the pandemic, because there was a different brain operating, I think, for a lot of poets. If you got the time to write. I know I didn't do a lot of writing because I was working a lot and homeschooling, but even the poems that I wrote don't seem to belong to me in that traditional, like I wrote this. It felt very much a part of this whole time that we were all in. So it's almost like this pandemic portal was playing out with a lot of poets that I know. And then if you're doing the challenge, those 30-day challenges, it's just almost like a spiritual practice or something.
Oh, for sure. And again, certainly that, because right now I'm in the first one, I'm going through the material from the first one. And there was such a sense of urgency, right? And nobody knew what was going to happen. And, you know, it's like, were you people banging pots out their windows? And it was it definitely a Canada thing. I don't know if it was a
That was happening here.
Yeah. So I mean, it was early on in that whole thing where it was just like everything was, just felt incredibly urgent and to pay attention and,
Well, with all of your moving and traveling too, I mean, do you find that the writing helps anchor you? So as you're you have different windows that you're looking out of, different stores that you have to go to, different roads that you have to navigate, or it's just kind of a guess that the poetry actually is a constant for you, or? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the thing that I know where to go to get find myself again. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Lauren, would you like to share with us any of your detour stories? Sorry to put you on the spot. You are still muted.
And you have a great forehead.
I thought maybe I could unmute you from here, but I think you have to do it yourself.
Still muted.
Yeah, you're still muted. We can always come back, Lauren. We've got plenty of time, and it's pretty chill group. So if you want to work on figuring that out, we'll come back to you. And we'll let Kristin and Matt kind of move on with some of the other stuff you guys wanted to share with us.
Yeah. Matt, did you want to, I'm kind of going through our notes here. Did you, we talked about some prompts. Did you have one? We talked about maybe having some time to do like a little bit of writing, actually.
Yeah, so we've got about an hour left, looks like. So one of the things I like to do a lot when I'm in a group is a poetry game called An Exquisite Corpse. Some of you have probably played this before, where you write a line, fold it, pass it to the next person. It's a little hard to do online, but one thing that can be helpful for getting yourself out of a predetermined route through a poem is to just go with what comes at you. Like Joey was talking earlier about having the poem come to you, and taking things line by line. And so if you've got a piece of paper, as we're talking for probably the next half hour or so, try to take a word or an image or some association that you get from what's happening here, and write a line, and then fold the paper, and then as the next one comes to you, write another line, fold the paper. And the goal is not necessarily to write a coherent poem, but to kind of see where things can tend to get a little wild, get a little unprompted, so to speak.
So Matt, you want to continue the conversation and have people just sort of write their lines as we're
Yeah.
talking. Okay, got it.
And then say in maybe 35, 40 minutes or so, we'll come back and maybe take a couple of those and look at them. And
Okay. Well, I'd love to circle back and sort of talk about in our description, we talked about finding saying yes to in our communities and how to go about doing that. So we haven't really, we talked about our writing and our practice. We talked a bit about writing groups. But I was curious, Matt, like, you know, seeking out poets is one thing, but where has have you ever created poetry that will sort of cross the bridge into other people's lives who aren't poets? Have you come across that? I'm thinking of poems on buses and poems in places where you least expect it. Like, what's been your experience with where you find poetry in the world outside of reading it and talking about it and writing it with other poets?
Well, I mean, it catches me all over the place. Like, I hear it in snippets of songs on the radio, or sometimes like a commercial on the TV, even though it's like totally inane, might have, you know, a phrase or a line or something that, or an image that stands out, almost like a poem. Graffiti has been a big thing for me. Seeing, I used to, when I lived in Chicago, I would go around and take my camera with me, and I would take pictures of all the murals and graffiti. I do that around here in Seattle too. Also, like, I would take images of the storefront windows at like Macy's, or there's this one in Chicago that was really fantastic. Is this Akela's Western Wear, and they would just have these cowboy kind of outfits, but the way that the light hit the window, it just like really created these amazing picture images for me too. So yeah, so I would just walk all over. When I lived in Chicago, I got in the habit of that. And then I found groups of people, and we would go around and do those same kind of things.
Really? You found other people like you that like that?
Yeah, the early days of Instagram, it was pretty easy
Uh-huh.
to find lots of folks who would want. I mean, Chicago's great for,
Yeah.
you could walk around neighborhoods and find all kinds of weird stuff. Haven't had as much of that here in Seattle with the visual art, but definitely there.
I have a friend who lives in Wicker Park and is always posting pictures of things found on the L. So like just on her commute. And they always tell this really bizarre story. You know, it'll be just like a rubber glove and, you know, a Twinkie, or, you know, something that's just sitting there. And yeah, I love that sort of, you know, just
Yeah,
so
and
that
I've been,
people like want to like document it and put it out there.
yeah, I mean, it's really great. That's why I love having a functional camera I can put in my pocket.
Mhm.
And yeah, lately, as in the last 5 years, I've been working on a tarot card deck of seeing the archetypes in found images on the street.
Oh, wow.
And that's really been a fruitful project, a long one. It takes forever to like be open enough to see these things wherever you're looking, but it's been good.
I had a sort of a writing art partner that she would take pictures based off of lines of my work. And so that was tricky. It was easier for me to write poems from photos that she took. but the opposite actually, from what she told me, was really creative, and she lived in the UK, so it wasn't like we were in the same landscapes at all. And what she would find out there in her, going from village to village, she was a house painter. It was so surprising how lines of mine could maybe crop up in some landscape where I didn't actually, I've never set foot, or and I thought that was kind of so long ago. But she took Polaroids. That was, I think, what made me think about that. And my oldest kid just bought a Polaroid camera at a yard sale this weekend, and it works. And they're getting film for it. It's like there's still like tangible things happening with cameras out there. Real
Yeah,
film.
I went to a reading a couple weeks ago, and the guy running the reading had an actual disposable camera
They're expensive.
with film, not like
Yeah.
with not the digital kind, but yeah, I was like surprised. I thought those things had gone away.
So there's a lot of, no, they haven't. Yeah. I bought some for my kids for a vacation one year, and it was very expensive to buy them and expensive to get the actual photos printed. But I realized how much we had to trust that whatever we took was going to be the picture. There was no going back, no deleting it, no touching up anything. And that was the surprise, was getting your film and seeing what you actually saw, or maybe something that you didn't intend to see, when you would see people photobombing your pictures. But there were always surprises. I remember my dad always cut people's heads off. Or a thumb was always there. Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about how we create spaces for poetry to exist, for other people to find them. And one thing here, besides the little free libraries, are people just put they've built these little frames, either freestanding in their yards or attached to a fence, and change out poems for anyone walking by. And that's something I love. So when I see that going, I just know like someone loves poetry in this neighborhood. And that gives me a lot of hope, because people, I think this came up at the reading I was at at LiTFUSE, at the fueling station, Jen, where the question was, well, I think poetry's dead. And like, I don't think so. From everything I've seen, it's alive and well, and it's lots of unexpected places. I'm exposed to a lot of high school slammers, poetry slam. But the actual like getting out on the street and finding it in its actual poetry form, I feel like there's a lot of people still, maybe even more people new to it, that want to like share it that way.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of those kind of communal spaces for poetry like that. When I first moved to Seattle, there was a woman who had a mailbox out on the street that was just for poem exchanges. So people could, you could take a poem, or you were also encouraged to leave a poem too. So that was nice. I have some friends that have done some experiments with repurposing old like condom and tampon machines and making like poetry vending machines.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's always fun, because it's great to get just a little a little poem from people in those kind of settings, whether it's in a gallery or in a store. It's nice to see that there are lots of people producing, even if it's not full-length collections of poetry. There's a lot going on all the time, and there's people writing and they're, getting a lot of life out of it. So
Mhm. Are those like small little booklets or? worksheet
no,
book
like
kind of
they
style,
they
or-
were like little scrolls that you
Oh, okay.
unroll with a poem on it that were just photocopied and cut
Mhm.
into little pieces and then rolled up and put in a little like gumball thing.
Hmm.
Um,
Poetry bombs,
mhm.
almost. So this is funny, but one of the first things I ever, my first poetry writing was when I was a kid. And I was trying to get my dad to quit smoking, my mom and dad. It was back in the day when they would Santa would come and bring a pack of smokes and put it in their stocking in the 70s. And I wanted them to quit. And so I remember doing it for my dad, but I don't think I did it for my mom. But I would take a cigarette out and write a poem, a real sappy, like roses are red, roses are blue, please stop smoking, I love you. But I got like other kinds of poems in there too, because I was really into like Blondie lyrics and stuff. So they got like really weird. And my dad would just get so mad at me. Where are my cigarettes? What did you do with them? But it was like I was trying to get him to quit with a poem. It has that power, I still believe. Use in rehab, be used for all sorts of purposes. Well,
Yeah.
how much time did you want to give people to write? Because I don't know if anyone's like, how's it feeling for people?
Well, kind of following up on what you were saying there, Kristin, we'll give people a few minutes
Okay.
more to write. But I was thinking, I mean, part of why I like the detour metaphor for me, because it reminds me of Guy Debord and the kind of 68 Paris student protests where they would create these wild actual detours through the city and put these juxtapositions and repurposed propaganda flyers and things all over the place to try and wake people up to what's going on. And so when you're talking about with your dad and using the poems that way, like there's that, that's the kind of great thing about the detour is that it can get you off the path and get you into a whole nother place where, you're awake to something that maybe you weren't awake to before.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that idea. Like purposely directing the traffic to create a chance thing. Like it's a little bit of control and it's a little bit of open-ended, see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit of corrupting the youth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I mean, that's one of the things that I've always liked about collage in particular, kind of piggybacking on what Joey was talking about before, is that a lot of times the stuff is not stuff I'm like coming up with per se. I like pool all this stuff together and then it's like, in some ways, it's kind of like that old Ouija board game where you're just kind of like listening to what's in front of you and kind of following the path of what the poem wants to say, and also kind of like feeding into what Lynn was saying earlier about the poem speaking on its own terms. And it's kind of like that. It's like listening to the outside. I mean, Jack Spicer used to talk about poetry as though it were receiving Martian broadcasts. And he would talk about, the little green men, and so to speak. It was kind of tongue in cheek, but but that's part of that process of the detour in that sense is like being alive to like, what are these messages that are outside of me that are happening in this moment that can come to the surface, almost like well, Robert, you were mentioning the palimpsest, almost kind of bleeding through the surface layer of what's there to create a kind of conversation between the past and the present.
Yeah, I wrote a book that way, and it
Mhm.
was in that one that I mentioned, it that's a long form that I published for myself. I wrote it in 4 days in a snowstorm out in the Eastern Oregon. So I was kind of had to sit at the desk. And I also was sick at the time. And I almost think like if I wasn't sick and there wasn't the snowstorm, I wouldn't have sat there, and something was definitely being channeled. Like I actually don't take much credit for that whole piece of work. And I felt it at the time, and I felt completely not at its mercy, but in its service almost. And how it was not like being possessed or anything. It was just more like being really, really connected, and understanding that like I had that by that point. And I think this goes back to what Laura was saying about having form. Like once you've been trained in form, you can actually go and then do jazz. You can do like the things that are off the map. And I was trained as a classical ballet dancer, and did that until I was 17. And it's the same idea that like once you know form and the kind of the rules, when those moments come, it's like you've got all of the muscles, you can do all of the things. And I think that was something that, for that long haul writing process and practice, like why you put in that time and learn the things that are difficult is because you can sit down in a snowstorm and suddenly have all your faculties and have enough sense that you can take some chances. You can trust at that point. Yeah, it's definitely spiritual for me. I don't know how it is for everybody, but
Yeah, I mean, you do take that time learning you learn the standards, and it's just like the jazz musicians, like they learn the standards, and then you improvise around those, and you kind of there's a skeleton there that you're playing with, but then you're playing in around it, and sometimes quite a ways away from it, but it gives you a framework to ground yourself a little bit,
right.
but without being too prescriptive, where you get too locked into like how a sonnet is supposed to be, and then it just becomes very predictable. But if you're working and later on or with other forms, like sometimes that move that happens wherever it came in the poem, in a sonnet for you, that volta switch, might start showing up in places.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mentioned that Ted Berrigan collection, the sonnets, and a lot of those poems aren't even 14 lines. He's doing something with all that Shakespearean sonnet form throughout.
That's a time. Can you put that in the chat?
What's that?
Can you put that in the chat? Is that something that we could like, it feels like we need like a resource list or something from this talk.
Oh yeah, let me see if I can find a good.
I do know people who love form so much that they remind me a lot of my grandmother who loved crossword puzzles and loved, word Scrabble. And so playing with form over and over never bores them. Like it's its own wild little jungle of forms. There's a lot of play that can happen in form too. I think.
Yeah, here's one of I put one of Berrigan's sonnets in
Thanks.
In the chat there. It's probably one of his more popular ones, but the book is out on Penguin, so you can find it now. He did self-publish it originally, but it's now one of on the Penguin rotation. So
Okay. Thanks. So do you want to, we can pivot to see if anyone wants to share what they've come up with on their.
Oh.
Joey.
I see Jen and Joey both had hands up, but maybe more.
I just was hoping that we would be able to save some time for some Q&A at the end so that people can open up and just ask you guys specific questions about you and your writing life and craft and things like that before because it is getting late into the night. So but yeah, I think let's share. But not me first.
Should I go?
Joey had her hand
Yeah.
up.
I just want to say that I keep a notebook as opposed to a camera. So I have that notebook. I can take a phrase out of Game of Thrones. I can take it off NPR. I can take it out of conversation. So this is kind of my thing. So here's what you guys said just a few minutes ago. Fold the paper, circle back, find poetry in the world, almost a poem, graffiti, the way the light hits the window, weird stuff, a rubber glove, a Twinkie, a tarot card deck, Ouija boards, poems from photos, lines crop up, tangible things, trust, surprise, 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 trust, take a poem, leave a poem, experiment, cut people's heads off.
It's really great, Joey. I love.
You guys said it all.
My God, I love it. I love the ending.
Yeah, and yeah, that the ending there is just so fitting. Maybe we'll take one more and then we'll leave some room for Q&A.
I'd like to read something if it's all right with Joanna, actually, because I was doing sort of the same thing, Joanna.
Hey, sure, go.
Yeah, and where you ended it with cut people's heads off is where that's in my poem as well. I was listening to
right.
Matt and Kristin. I had something from Matt and something from Kristin. So if it's okay with you, Joanna,
Absolutely.
I'd like to just keep reading where you ended in my poem.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to start it with that ending though. Cut people's heads off. Pale ears of corn cradled in the crook of her arm and lightning held loosely in her open palm. My mom started smoking after her father died in Merit ultralights. I remember white paper and light green, script, straight script under clear plastic, new plastic ashtrays on the kitchen table, dull silver aluminum legs join at the corners. I'll start it tomorrow.
Mm.
That's it.
Whoa. That's so
Lauren, were you
cool.
able to
Yeah.
get your audio working? That was great, Robert. Thank you. And Joey, really what this has done for me, so I'm kind of just jumping in, but
Yes, it was successful.
it
Lauren,
pushes
I did it.
me
Thank you,
to
Kristin.
look Hey, Lauren. It pushes
Hi,
me to look for
Elizabeth.
things that I haven't been looking for. Thank you. Lauren, so good to hear your voice. Did you do
Thank
the
you.
exercise, or do you just want to share a little bit about your detours with us?
Sure, I think I've combined my detours with the poem. It's poetic enough. So detours, I love to improvise. John Cage, indeterminacy. I only write jazz. People adding in a conversation, ad-libbing, asking for a color or a beautiful moment or an artwork, adding in lyrics from the song I'm listening to when I'm writing, intention, adding one, flip open the Bible, flip open coordinates, adding in the words of the day from Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com, flip open my art history textbook, add visual art principles. And so like I haven't been taught form, and so I use visual art principles. Like I really care about symmetry and balance, but I don't know how to write a limerick or a sonnet. And so I'm like conscious that I only do wild poetry and freestyle, and I really love to improvise.
Well, visual
thank
art can
you.
give you a great bouncing off point too. So like, just knowing that practice and process can help you find that form as well.
Thank you.
Isn't there someone in LiTFUSE that does form? I thought I saw in the class descriptions, Jen.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad about it.
There's one on sonnets and there's one on braiding, and I think there's one of those two also has a like a side note on persona writing.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
there's a couple of classes kind of rebelling against form, but really they're kind of still about form. So I think that those will be interesting topics too.
I'll be sure to sign up for those because I don't have that full toolkit that Kristin's talking about. I don't have all the muscles. And I would like to because I admire form. I really like composition. So form is exciting to me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to share what they wrote?
I'll go ahead and share mine. I haven't read back. I did the fold the paper thing, and so I haven't actually looked at the lines. I just I wrote things that I heard, but I also let them take me off to where they took me. So trust the picture. Wait a minute, it started the other way. It started Mark of the Beast, game of dice, like smashing pumpkins, narcissistic graffiti, a light streaming through the window, godlight. It's just a matter of looking the landscape, trust the picture.
Mm. And you hadn't looked at any of that. You just kind of
Nope.
wrote, folded, and
Yep, wrote and folded.
cool.
I tried to not think about what I had just written. So.
Right. Yeah, you have to have like short-term memory loss when you do that.
Which I do. It's great.
Erase it.
Yeah, but I mean, even still, just not seeing it all together can shut off that editor that makes it want to like all tightly fit together. And so then it opens it up and you get those nice juxtapositions, like the line about the light, and then it's just about seeing, or those kind of things are really great kind of movement from the kind of predetermined to the indeterminate, but in a way that creates some meaning that more in like where your mind is going at the moment. So
I had heard of I don't know who it was, but it was a fiction writer who had written an entire novel with his computer screen off.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Dave Davies in for Terry Gross. Our guest today, John McEnroe, is remembered as
and now we get Terry Gross.
We get Terry Gross, a
55.
bonus guest.
That's single.
Is that Lynn? Lynn, I
it's
think you left
Lynn's.
your microphone on.
Anyways, I thought that was really fascinating. One way to be really unattached to editing is let it go and hope that you've typed on the right part of your keys.
Yeah, I did one project for a year where every morning I would jot a line down, but I had and fold it, and then each sheet of paper was a particular day in the month. So it'd be a month before I'd come back and it's all folded. So it would totally cut off the memory of like what I had written before. A lot of those were like crazy wild. They were all over the place and had some great stuff in them. But I learned a lot from the process of doing it. That really opened up, some ideas about how to write a poem on the fly as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because it doesn't always happen at your desk or in your office, or it's going to happen in the car or as you're just loaded up your groceries, or it's going to happen as you are waiting for the dentist or something.
What's great is if you can set a random timer on your phone and then have it go off and you have to write a poem from whatever's around you at the moment. I did a project like that once too, and that was a lot of fun. Those actually worked really well, surprisingly enough.
I like that. Because we can tune out so easily, so it actually forces you to like pay attention.
Yeah, I would have to like pull the car over because the alarm would go off. I don't want to write while I was driving, so.
Anyone else want to share?
We also have about 10, 15 minutes left if people just have questions.
I'd like to hear about really anybody's daily practice. I'm always curious to hear about, if habit helps your work, I guess.
It helps when I have it. When I have my practice. I have been all through the pandemic, through various job changes and a lot of chaos. And I am just coming out of a pretty chaotic place and hoping that my practice comes back to me in a daily way. It's always sort of held, but honestly, coming to LiTFUSE in a few weeks was a part of me resetting, because it just has gotten lost over the last couple of years. And just to be honest, like, I would love to wake up in the morning and have that time to write. It's partly what Lynn was talking about. Like, you do make some excuses, or you do fill your time with other things. Like, if you want to do it, you can do it. But some of it has been beyond my control. So I'm trying to just, be gentle with myself and know that like it'll come back. But it's about intention. When I had a daily practice, it was pretty small. It was 20 minutes before my kids would wake up. But if you can write for 20 minutes every day, you can have quite a lot at the end of a month. And I'm not talking like a whole poem a day kind of thing, but just writing, journaling, whatever, just getting playful, not actually producing anything of form or substance, but just getting it out. That helps a lot. And I know
So,
I'm a morning person, so I don't
Yeah.
try to write at night.
I can't write at night.
I
I
watch
mean, I probably should
I
try
watch
it
Breaking
because it
Bad
would
at night.
get all over the place, but
so
What
it
were you
would
gonna
be,
say?
it would be easier to write first thing in the morning, but I have to take a walk first thing in the morning. So then, that gets extended. But I want
Yeah,
to
but-
say that one of the people in my writing, we've been sharing what our writing practices are like. And this one guy, Stan, he was an English teacher until he retired. He has written 10 lines a day. And in some ways, I like that better than 10 minutes or 20 minutes, because he always gets up and he writes 20 lines. And then if he's looking for something for a poem, he might sift back through those 20 lines. And when he did this presentation, sharing with us how he runs his writing practice, he brought one of his binders. He keeps everything. It's like Ellen Bass, she keeps everything. And I thought that was an interesting way to run a writing practice. It's sort of low pressure, and if you want to do more, you can do more, but 10 lines. I
Yeah.
liked it. I think maybe at least I speak for myself. The expectation is that I have to sit down and write something. I can't just say I'm trying to open my eyes today, got up the way you wake up. Has to be something.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Sage Cohen, she's a writer and down here in Portland. She had her baby a few years after me, and we met at Voice Catcher on that collective, and she was just beating herself up because she just didn't have a practice anymore that she used to have. And so I created the Low Expectation Writers Club, and those little notebooks, they're like what are they? They're like black and green. They look like old
Yeah,
school
the
notebooks.
composition books.
Composition, there you go. But it's really small, so I gave her that, and it was 1 word a day. That's it. Like, just lower that all the way down to 0. And
yeah, my
Yeah, that
friend
was
Paul
a-
Nelson does 17 syllable sentences every day, and he's been doing it for 22 years now.
yeah,
And it's pretty some of them are really hilarious. You always have to watch out around him because whatever you say might wind up in one of his sentence poems that he will read.
he's doing that.
at,
He's doing the haiku thing as you're talking, like, counting your syllables. Yeah.
yeah, but he does it as a sentence. So it's not like the 575. It's
Mhm.
just 17 syllables. He got it from Allen Ginsberg, who used to do them, called them American sentences.
So that's what he writes, 17 syllables or 17 syllable sentences?
A 17 syllable sentence every day. He has one of those little filled notebooks. And he's always jotting them down. And they're half the time they're a hoot. It's just it's a lot of fun to see that, a practice like that. I don't write necessarily every day, but I do try to set aside months at a time where I'm going to write every day. The only thing I do regularly every day is I might play Wordle, but and spelling bee, and keep my puzzle maker solver going, even when I'm not actively writing, although I'm always taking notes, even if it's in my head.
Yeah, I feel like those are all like calisthenics, like those, you know, if you do 20 sit-ups a day or whatever, it's the same kind of thing. You're just warming up. And, you know, you might find other points in your day that are better for doing that. Or, you know, I think, I don't know if we had this conversation, Matt, but about like saying yes also means saying no. So like, if you have to sort of reduce the noise in your life to give yourself your writing time and your writing practice, you have to say no to things. You know, if that's the only way to get it, then you have to do that. It's hard when you're in relationships or with children or obligations with work, but there's almost always something that you can say no to. And, you know, I don't have a huge social life. I didn't even have one before the pandemic. But I was pretty comfortable with saying no to going and hanging out and doing, you know, just like go and get drinks with people, or, you know, sometimes you need it, but sometimes it was like, this is actually my only night without children and I want to write. So you have to kind of be your own advocate for that, especially if you have non-poet, non-writer friends who might not get it. That's just life. Not everyone's going to see it as important as it is for you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have to have solid boundaries. I mean, you cannot have them and still be a successful writer, but you're going to have a much harder time at it.
Well, I think another way of saying that is you have to be really committed to yourself.
For sure.
Yeah, committed to yourself or committed to the writing. Because sometimes the writing feels like it's coming from somewhere else, at least in my practice. So it's like I have to be committed to listening to the voices.
I think deadlines help. If you have to show up at an open mic, or if you want to send a piece out to get published, you know, you're going to finish a poem to read at a reading or to submit.
Mhm.
So deadlines keep me going. And once it's gone, I got to write a new one. So I don't spend a whole lot of time revising.
Deadlines are super helpful. And that's why those 30 poems in 30 days thing,
Exactly.
when you've got a community of people you feel accountable to, it gives you a deadline. So, which is great because you get 30, close to 30 poems done anyway, at least.
And it's free. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know a lot of deadlines are contests that you have to pay for and things like that, but you can create your own sort of structure around that, your own goals, your own things at the end of your, where you want to be from where you are. And also, I think lowering expectations is part of that too. So like if you didn't quite get that chapbook done in time for that particular contest, you know there's going to be another one, and you just sort of reset that end goal. What is it in the horses, in horseland, Joey? You know, the things that they jump over?
What are we talking about? Cavaletti?
Things in writing that the horses jump over, the gates. You just move the gates.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I was trying to make a leap there.
Make it lower.
Make it lower. That's right.
Well, yeah, that's the one word a day. There's a thing called cavaletti where they're basically on the ground and the horse just has to lift.
That's it. That's it. That's what you need. I really love
And
cavaletti.
cavaletti is a beautiful Italian word. I'm going to have to use that.
But I'm going to use it.
Wait, what?
Let's all use it.
I think you said earlier we could share those things.
Yeah, right. It's all open source.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have time for maybe one more quick question and then we'll need to wrap it up for the evening. Anybody else have one more question they're dying to ask? Or just a comment?
I'll ask one. I've got Kristin's book here that I got the last time I was at Fuel. I also have Refugia. They're also beautiful. How do you find those gorgeous phrases that you use when you're telling it slant? You're not saying blah, blah. You're saying something else. And it just blows my mind. How do you come up with that? Does that just happen? Is that just your talent? Where have you found those beautiful turns of phrase? That's a tough question.
That's a really tough question.
And I wish I would have underlined some before I came to this. So I'm talking about beautiful language and how you find it.
I think I'm really inspired just by landscape and understanding the topography that I'm in. So much of what I write is kind of taking what I'm seeing and finding the metaphor. I'm almost always looking for the metaphor of a situation or the landscape. And that's, I think, my attempt, because I can be really lyrical. It's my attempt at painting, because I'm not a painter, but I really wish I could. So if I can invoke sort of the color, the feel, this whole sensory experience of a place through words, that's maybe what you're reading. And I like to play with words, so I don't like using, I'll notice in a whole collection if I've used a word too many times because I'm in love with it or whatever. And so I'll go through and challenge myself to really look at it in a different way, so I'm not repeating myself so much. Sometimes it's useful to have a word crop up because that's your kind of thematic thread that runs through, or one of many, but yeah, that's when I get stuck. I try to challenge myself to find other words.
Other words.
Or other metaphors to evoke the same thing.
Well, they all seem so fresh to me and awesome. So what do you read? Do you read fiction as well as poetry?
I do. I'm a pretty
dictionary.
I was a fiction writer before I was a poet. I mean, the stuff I wrote as a kid, I don't know if that is considered poetry. I just read whatever anybody gives me. I'm pretty open to all forms and all kinds of poets. And, you know, when I was at your poetry prowl in Ellensburg, having the book fair and having so much available that you just can't find. I mean, I'm lucky I have Powell's nearby, so, but to be able to actually like be with people's collections that you're not going to find anywhere else, that's actually been the best source of material. And I just like come home with so many books. It's like food, you know, it all informs. So thank you.
Thank you.
So along those lines, I just wanted to say one thing I learned from a class I took from Ellen Bass is just to write down something that sounds good or looks good to me. And so if somebody describes something in an amazing way, just to write it down. So then I have those little composition books you were talking about, and it's all full of little phrases. And sometimes I look at them just when I'm looking for better language. But even just regular reading seems to present me with a lot of good language. I thought Where the Crawdads Sings had amazing language in it.
Children are a good source too.
Say what?
Children are a good source. There was a poet at this poetry reading that I hosted at a community orchard, and she had a poem that was written almost entirely by eavesdropping on the kids on the other side of the fence, and it was hilarious, but it was also really poignant.
Well, thank you all. It is getting late into the night, and I want to be respectful of people's evenings. Thank you so much, Kristin. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you all for just being open and sharing and participating in the conversation. It's been a really fun evening, and Thank you for just reminding me I need to be aware and looking for words and writing things down and noticing. So I really appreciate your talk tonight. We do have one more virtual online summer school event happening next Thursday, September 15th at 6 p.m. And it's going to be with Robert Lashley and Gary Copeland Lilly. It's called Migrations. I think it's going to be a fantastic talk. I really encourage you to come back and be a part of that.
They're both really phenomenal.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and then the Sunday after that, the 18th is our big faculty scholar reading, and most of the faculty is going to be there reading some of their work along with people that they've chosen to come attend LiTFUSE. That's going to be a great event. And then our weekends here. So I'm not sure. I don't know if all of you are signed up. There's still time. If not, there's still time to add a master class. There's still time to do the online, the virtual version if you can't make the drive all the way to Titan. But definitely come back on the 15th at 6 o'clock. And again, thank you so much, Kristin and Matt. Really appreciate you and looking forward to seeing you in person.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Jen. Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Matt. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming,
everybody.
everybody. Good to see you all.
Everyone have a good evening.